Welcome everyone to the second podcast of Two Biscuits. Two Biscuits podcast. Probably the most phenomenal podcast on the net today, as long as you are watching. So, anyways,
It's the
anyways,
best one you're watching right now. It's the best one you're watching right now.
that's right. I'm David Schreiber, and my brother is
Jeff Tunstall over here.
Jeff Tunstall. That's right. Putting a lot of thought into this, as the days go on, the hours go on, the weeks go on, you sit there, what are we going to talk about? What are we going to talk about?
Yeah.
So it's kind of one of those things where it's good to have this concept together so we can kind of put something together. So anyway,
Well,
what's going on in your world today? Okay.
Yeah, the good news is, Dave, that we always have something to talk about. There's always something going on, crazy in the world, or
Always.
crazy in our lives, or just between education and children and grandchildren and jobs and just the world in general, the weather. Oh my
Hey,
gosh.
I
Yeah.
got to ask you a
Just,
question, because
yeah.
being a smart guy, and I consider myself maybe a smart guy.
Yeah, you are.
I'm always looking at science. I'm always looking at, we'll say, climate
Mm,
change, whatever you want to call it. I was always like, the last couple of years we've not had any, like, for schools, they haven't had any snow days.
mm,
And then all of a sudden, this month of January, it's been exceptionally cold. And then next
mm.
week, I believe, if I've heard this or seen or heard this right, that all the way down into possibly northern Florida, there's
Mm.
potential for some snowfall because
Yeah,
the temperature's so cold.
yeah,
So definitely a time of the year where
yeah,
I'm thinking, moving like Key West might not be good enough yet to stay warm all
yeah,
winter long. So
yeah. I'm kind of I run both ways. I mean, I definitely see a warming trend. I mean, I think the glacial retreats make that really obvious. When you look at pictures of glaciers from the past and look at them now, the glacial retreats make it obvious that we're warming. Sea levels are certainly increasing. But I'm fascinated by the cold sometimes and how that works all in. I remember somebody mentioned the other day, and I don't remember how it goes. It's like there's a La Nina that comes, and there's an El Nino that comes, and one of them does one thing, and one of them does the other. And if I'm going to say it out loud, I probably should have known the answer. I probably should have written that down to which was which. But apparently, it's not doing what people thought it was going to do.
well,
And
see, I like the idea of the polar vortex coming
oh
down
yeah,
into
oh I
North.
love that. Yeah,
When
oh
that
yeah,
when that thing dips down in there, now I'm
yeah,
going to be honest with you. When I was growing up as a kid, it was
yeah,
just called a cold front.
yeah.
Now it's
Exactly,
called the
exactly.
polar
I know,
vortex.
I know.
And I want
We
and I
used
want
to.
to know how many people out there know what a vortex is.
I don't know. Well, if we're talking about if the only people watching are our family, I don't know. It's a short list.
It might be. They're going. Dad, did you talk about a vortex? What's a
Vortex. If
vortex?
we, I know my children. If we talked about geography, my children would turn off the podcast. They'd be like, I don't know where that is. I don't know what you're talking about. Just stop, stop. I don't know what that is. So
That's funny.
I will tell you, it's amazing. We're talking about the snow and everything, and you being now from Pittsburgh, and you weren't there then, but I used to have a T-shirt that talked about surviving the snowstorm of 78, 79.
That's
So I
awesome.
had, so my dog was 15 years old at that point, getting ready to turn 16 that winter, and she was kind of nearing the end of her life, and she had had a little stroke before she passed away, and we were still trying to get her out to help her to go to the bathroom and stuff like that. I had to make trails in the backyard to get her out of the house into the yard. I remember making a snow fort with my buddy Dave
Hmm.
McFarland, and we sprayed water over the outside to make it an igloo, and it was so warm and nice inside there. And I was 15, maybe 14, something like that, and still young enough to play and old enough that it was fun, that we knew kind of what to do and have some
I have
fun.
to tell
But
you something
and
that's
2 feet of snow, maybe at least. I don't know. It was a lot.
I, I have to tell you something ironic about what you just said, because for some reason I was watching old clips of the
Mm.
Steelers from like the
Oh,
'70s
yeah,
just the other day. And of course, the Immaculate Reception comes
yeah.
in.
Oh,
But
yeah.
there was a couple clips I was watching just of like Mean Joe Green and Jack Lambert, and
Mm.
just some of the amazing, like, and back then obviously, we call it the quality of the,
Yeah,
movie screen and movies and things
yeah,
weren't as good. But
yeah.
when you see these guys hit somebody, especially
Oh,
in
yeah.
cold weather, Three River
Oh, gosh.
Stadium,
Oh, Had to
you
hurt.
know, I was having this conversation with my, I mean, I was looking back on, man, and Terry Bradshaw. I mean, these guys were just animals. I mean, just tough as
So tough.
nails.
Yeah, so
And I'm like,
tough.
and then I could try to compare it to now to what we kind of see, but I guess that's part of one of those things you think about in terms of evolution or learning that
Yeah,
back
yeah,
then nobody knew about, any type of head injuries or anything
yeah,
else.
yeah,
But when I
yeah,
watch that, I mean, it is amazing.
yeah,
And here's the thing, it's so cold out there. I mean, the snow's falling, and
yeah.
and there's no propane warmers on the sideline.
No,
There's
no,
nothing.
no,
No,
no. Do,
they're
do,
they're just going at it.
I have such incredible visions and memories of some of those things, and you mentioned Jack Lambert, and I remember he had dental
Yeah,
work, right? He'd
yeah,
taken out, so he basically looked like a rabid vampire
yeah.
animal kind of thing when so he didn't have his teeth in while he was playing. And talking about
Hmm.
Terry, I still have this horrible memory. I was a young kid. I loved Terry Bradshaw as much as my
Yeah,
dad. He made my dad mad for stupid reasons. I mean, my dad's yelling at Hall of Famers to do better.
yeah.
Franco and Terry and all. I mean, come on. I mean, Hall of Fame. You understand that, right?
Hmm.
Anyways, they show it all the time when they start talking about hits on quarterbacks and stuff like that. Now you touch them, 15 yards. You
Yeah.
came in and touched their knees. Well,
No, you can't touch the quarterback.
this dude picked Terry up. Some other dude stripped the ball away, ran away, and the dude that had him dumped him on his head. Literally dumped him, and he's unconscious on the ground. I'm crying. I'm literally crying, thinking Terry's dead. Terry's dead. He's like, I mean, he's like, it's like one of our WWF moves. He picks him up and does the power slam with him onto the hard cold field,
Hey,
right?
just remember, he's still kicking and
I
doing,
know, I know.
Fox, these.
I don't know how his brain still works. And it wasn't even grass, dude. It was
No,
astroturf. That
it,
stuff was like freaking cement to,
it
to
wasn't even
pound
like the
on.
AstroTurf we have today.
No, no,
Not
no.
even close. Hey, I want to say I'm really excited that you gave a shout out to Dale.
Yeah,
When people listening to this are going like, "Who's Dale?" And it's not a
no,
race. He's not a race car driver.
no, no. My dad was awesome. It was hard to.
Yeah,
He he did a lot. He did a lot for me, and it's a lot of who I am is
that
because
that's
of him.
somebody's grandpap. Remember that.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah. I
Yeah,
actually, a lot of people think I keep, those are all my degrees that are there behind me in the camera. But the one over this shoulder that's on the back there with the little slash in it, it's actually a University of Pittsburgh 1959 diploma. It's my
just
dad's.
I need I need the audience, especially the group that's up here, to know that
Mm.
you got quite a conflict in that room behind you there. You got a
Dude,
pit and
there's,
a pit
I
and a
know.
WVU guy. I mean,
I know there are. Yeah, there's a West Virginia
yeah,
one over on this side, and there's a Pitt one over on this side. Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
that's a war scene
Yeah.
behind you back there.
Yeah.
You know,
Like fathers and sons, right? You never know
yeah,
how fathers and sons, get along and everything. And I was never sure if my dad thought I was okay or not. You just never know. I know he probably told my sister, and she's gonna watch, so she'll either agree
yeah.
or not agree. Probably told my sister all the time how much he loved her, and how wonderful she was. I didn't get too much of that. I had to look for the subtle things that showed me, oh yeah, yeah, he's totally into me. He totally loves me. You want to know what my big moment was? When I came home from school and the Pitt grad had on a West Virginia swimming sweatshirt. That was
That was
it,
it.
dude. That was it. I was like, my dad loves me.
Well, since I'm probably one of the few guys that has spent quality time with your dad, from
Yeah,
Pirates games to just hanging
yeah,
out,
yeah, yeah,
I can say attest to this. Your dad was a
yeah.
smart cookie. He was a
Oh yeah.
smart guy.
Oh, 100%.
Yeah, he was smart.
Do
He
you
was
do
smart.
you remember? I have a really fun memory of that game that we went to. The three of us went to the
Yeah,
Pirate game at the new stadium, which
yeah. PNC Park.
honestly, that was a little bit emotional for me to not have the game be at Three River Stadium because that's where I always went growing up. I always went Three River Stadium, and the first time I went to Pittsburgh after they tore it down, I was kind of verklempt. I mean, Three River Stadium was gone. I mean, that was a big
Yeah,
part of my life growing up. But we were at that game, and you and me and my dad and Dale got a beer. Do you remember that? And
Yeah.
I'm not much of a beer drinker. I kind of
No.
nurse my beer. I'm pretty
No.
pitiful as a beer
Oh, I know
drinker.
where you're going. I know where you're going
And
with this.
and so here's I didn't have a beer very often with my dad. It was just one of because I don't like it all that much.
All right.
And my dad gave me shit for not drinking my beer. Can you? I
You
mean,
said a
just
bad
like
word. You said a bad word.
I occasionally you can say a bad word,
All right, I'll
but
let it slide.
he gave me grief for being a lightweight and nursing my beer.
I'm going to be honest. That was one of the greatest moments. I'm standing there going, "You go, Dale. You go." That was fantastic.
He had a lot more practice than I did. So his mom's family were just wonderful, wonderful people, and I owe a lot to my dad's success to the Graham family. Actually, I have a
Yeah.
grandson named Graham right now because of that family. And they were
Right.
so it was my mom my grandma's cousins. They were just so good to her, and the whole family was so wonderful. And we had a Graham family reunion every year, and the kegs are hooked up, Iron City beers flowing. It was
Wow.
oh man, it was a lot of horseshoe playing. Yeah, yeah, and the conversation I got every time I was there, it would always be some swim meet that I had gone to, and they were getting some kind of things, and every single person who doesn't know anything about athletics always asks an athlete, "Are you going to the Olympics?" Are you going to the Olympics? No, not this time, because it would be
Maybe
like
next time.
1981, right? Like you always said 1981 Olympic trial
I
qualifiers,
was really
since
trying
there
to give.
aren't any. There aren't
I,
any.
I was giving you high praise. You know that. High
Thank you,
praise. You
thank you,
know I was.
thank you. I know, I know.
It's kind of ironic you talk about dads. My dad's obviously a little bit different than your dad in terms of just just progressing through life.
Yeah.
But something ironic, that I have to share with you, just because the other day, my dad, he lives in Connecticut now, and make a long story short, not he's got some health issues, but
Right.
he was actually stationed down in Camp Lejeune back in the
Hmm.
early '60s, and
I remember hearing about that.
there's this big Camp Lejeune lawsuit going on because of contaminated water and a few things.
Hmm.
But
Hmm.
anyways, I was talking. I don't. Sometimes we don't know a lot about our parents, and we've talked about
Sure.
that, and that's a big purpose of why we're doing
Yeah.
this. Because our down the road, our kids can look back and say, "I didn't know that about my dad."
Yeah. Yeah.
But I didn't know my dad, when he went in the Marine Corps back, and I guess it must have been like 63 or 62, that
Mm.
he was stationed. There used to be a base right next to Camp Lejeune called Camp Geiger. Camp
Okay.
Geiger was actually, I guess you could say, the beginning point from what he's told me about where all this, contaminated water kind of the whole thing started. But
Mm.
make a long story short, I guess he is one of the I don't know he's one of those people that he was there for like, I think he said like 700 days or something, in terms of
Mm.
time spent, in
Yeah.
that area. But it's just one of those things that, I never knew that. I knew
Mm.
he was there, and he was a few other places, and but I've learned a lot more about him. But
Mm.
it's kind of hard to think that, I'm in my 50s now, and I'm just learning this. So
Hmm.
sometimes, for those of us who are listening, sometimes you
Yeah.
may just want to ask a couple extra questions sometimes to
Yeah.
get some more information, because sometimes
Yeah.
people aren't out there going, "Hey, did you know this?" or
Yeah.
"Did you know that?"
Yeah.
So he is,
Yeah.
though, part of that whole Camp Lejeune, I'll call it, that whole lawsuit thing going on now.
Yeah,
So
that's amazing to think about. And he did
yeah,
multiple tours in Vietnam, right?
yeah. From what
Yeah,
sometimes when
yeah,
I get stories, he doesn't give me a
yeah,
whole lot of stories,
yeah.
because I don't
I
I
feel
don't I
like
don't know if it's a good time.
he and I were out in your garage one time, and we were talking about him going to Vietnam. So maybe he felt more comfortable telling a stranger about
He
it. I
might
don't
have.
know.
Yeah,
Yeah,
he might have.
yeah,
Yeah. So
yeah.
that's one of the things again where you want to, and maybe it's sometimes, I don't know if it's when we were growing up, and this
Mm,
is a time period. I'll use an example. Evil Knievel. When
yeah,
we would watch TV, and you would see, like, and
it's a
for
big
people who
event.
don't, yeah, people don't know this. Evil Knievel was probably the first, I'll call it star
Mm,
Daredevil.
yeah,
He
probably.
he was very popular, but kids growing up idolized him. And
Oh
I don't
yeah,
know if it was because this guy's nuts, this guy's
yeah.
crazy, but when I was a kid, you idolize people, for things that they did sometimes that were, non-traditional or
Hmm.
just different. But sometimes, you ask yourself, why do you do those things? Why did you do this?
Mm,
Why did you join the military? Why did you go to
mm,
college? Why are
mm,
you doing these things?
yeah.
And I'm just reflecting on the fact that, when we were growing up, there wasn't necessarily a lot of deep thoughts or deep
Mm,
meaning given to why. You know, and I think that's important for us to kind of, and that's something you and I have discussed about this podcast is that I'm trying to get into the why more. You know, the why of why this is happening, why this is going on, why sometimes, because I'm going to tell you something. I just found this out. I just found, I got to share this with you. Hang on. I shared this with Michelle today, and it was just something I found, and I got to make sure I find it here real fast. Okay. All right, hang on. Oh, you're going to like this. You're going to love this. Wait till you hear this. This is fantastic. You ready?
I'm ready.
Good judgment comes from experience.
Okay.
And experience, well, that comes from poor judgment. Is that not deep?
So I would say then that I have a lot of experience. Because the beginning of my life was filled with poor judgment.
Which gives you experience.
Yeah, I guess.
I read that and I'm like,
yeah.
It's a whole full circle thing.
Yeah, I like that a lot. That's really good. Yeah. That should have been the whole title of this episode. That's
I honestly think some things happen for a reason. You know, I think I'm just going to say, I think this experience right here is something that somehow this whole experience right here was actually, I think, foreshadowed 20, almost 30 years ago.
Yeah.
Just because it was, but sometimes, and I want the audience to know when we're doing this, there's a strong focus and there's a strong, I'll say, not even a focus. There's a direction, a guideline, there's a framework, but a lot of what happens right now is us, you and I, in terms of where we are and what we're doing and things.
It's not a lot written down. I don't have a lot written down for today.
No. I had some things, and some things just, and sometimes the best things that happen aren't necessarily planned. And I think this goes into what we're talking about with just our kids and lives, and not just anybody's, because as a parent, if you're whoever you are, you can't plan everything in life. There's a lot of unplanned experiences.
Absolutely.
And I think that's sometimes hard for people, because I'll give you an example. For me, I was the most planned person you will ever meet, and I think you kind of,
I'd agree with that. Yeah.
You kind of led that, or kind of talked about that in the first episode when I first came into teaching, and I had something, I had a corn cob stuck up my backside, and all that. And I'll never forget.
You were on a mission. You were on a mission.
I was on a mission. That's right. I had a mission.
Had a purpose.
Yes, and if you talk about unplanned things, unplanned being, I had this plan of everything was supposed to be a certain way in life, and it didn't come out that way.
Yeah.
But in my mind, I had a plan, but I didn't realize or know how to respond sometimes when that plan didn't go through. Absolutely. So when the unplanned things happened, I had to rely on people like you and my wife and other people, my other friends, to help me become okay with things that were unplanned. Yeah. But the hardest part is that that's life. Life is not supposed to. Yes, you're supposed to have a framework, I guess.
Yeah, you gotta have a plan, a little bit of a plan.
Yeah, you got a little bit of plan. But there are so many things that happen that are unplanned, and being prepared for that, and it actually goes back to you talking about just being a flexible person,
Right.
Being flexible, and I work with and have seen people so much through the years that they are so rigid and so focused and so driven at one point, they sometimes forget to see the forest behind the trees,
Yeah.
And so there's a lot of that.
Some of the greatest things in your life are things that are unplanned, and they just happen, and they're the most powerful memories that you have. I think about how lucky I've been. You're talking about all the different planning that you did in your life.
Yeah.
I really got to see this big chunk and big transition of your life right before my eyes. I mean, here you are over at my house as a brutally young single teacher, hanging out, watching silly wrestling, watching the WWF. We decided last week we're just going to call it that, and hopefully there's no World Wildlife Federation lawsuit for us or something.
You think about this, and I'm going to say, very successful people talking right here. I mean, and very well educated.
Yeah.
But there is this profound, and I'm going to say this because it's the craziest thing. You and I have this. We'll say this connection through wrestling.
We do.
I have to tell you, this is great. I broke my leg about 5 weeks ago, as you may know. and it was very. I'm playing. Here it goes.
Mm-hmm.
Broke my leg, and then I had all, and I went. I had I guess you call it a splint on it. I went and I had to go to the ortho doctor, and I'm like, all right, put a cast on this thing. Let's walk down the road for a couple of weeks. We'll be good. And he looks at me and says, "You gotta have surgery," and I'm like, "Surgery?" And anyways, make a long story short, I got that 5 screws. So a week passes. I go for my surgery. I'm prepping to be, I'm in the operating room.
Incapacitated. Yeah.
I'm in the operating room before they put
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
anesthesia on me, and all of a sudden I hear the surgeon go, "I don't know if I'm going to make it tonight." And I'm listening and I'm focused, and I'm like, this because SmackDown or whatever wrestling WWEF promotion
Yeah.
was in Pittsburgh Friday night on the 27th back in December. So I'm listening to my surgeon start saying he's going to be going to the wrestling event.
Yeah.
So I'm like, and I guess it got backed up somewhat. So I'm like, and trust me, I'm sitting there. I'm like, did he actually say that?
Yeah.
And sure enough, it's before he starts, drilling into me. I said, "You're gonna make it tonight. You have to make it."
You have
And then
to
all of a
make it to
sudden,
wrestling.
I start talking about when you and I and our wives, we would go to Monday Night Raw. We would go to WCW Nitro, and I'm throwing out these names, and I'm like, "Hey, Ric Flair," and next thing I know, he gives me the mask and out.
Yeah, you're gone. Yeah.
Yeah. So to go 2 weeks ahead, I had another meeting with him. I saw him last week, and I said, "Did you make it to the wrestling events?" Oh, he goes, "Oh yeah." So even a person who is a orthopedic surgeon,
Yeah.
and he could tell me anything and everything that I wanted to know. And I consider him to be a young guy, and that's crazy. He's a young guy. He's probably in his 30s, and I'm going. So I think sometimes everybody has something different that connects them to things.
Yeah.
It's kind of weird how I don't think wrestling was something that was like at the top of our list of, hey, on Monday night from now on, we're going to go do wrestling. Or it was something that connected us because it connected us to our occupation in some way.
Yeah. It's a little of both. I mean, certainly the kids that we taught, there was an at-risk group of kids. I think we mentioned that in the last episode that were really, really kind of tied us to them, that knowledge that we had because it's something they were into. And I just think it's just human nature at its finest, honestly. There's so much that you learn from, and I think there's other things too. It doesn't have to be that particular thing, but I think when you're in an environment where you want to relate to people, you have to know kind of what they like and what they don't like.
Right.
And you mentioned a lot of. I want to pay close attention to the time because you and I could talk for an hour. We're going here, but you had mentioned that you really wanted to hit kind of purpose in this episode and why we're doing that and almost like a personal purpose. And you mentioned that you think you had found yours. I mean, education in general is kind of your purpose. I think that mine might be a little more specifically teaching. I loved all that aspect of things. Maybe yours is too, because
I'm gonna say this. I say this to people all the time that even though my whole world started as teaching, you were the first one that kind of in terms of teaching, we became, I'll say, professional colleagues.
Yeah.
But then I married a teacher.
Yeah.
I'm a teacher, and then we still continue that. My wife is still a
Absolutely.
teacher.
Yeah.
Even though I'm in a different role, I'm still a teacher. And sometimes I our whole life has been teaching, even though not necessarily have been in the classroom that long.
Right. Oh no, it still is. You're teaching teachers. Yeah, you're teaching teachers, and I think that my role with the university now in my second career is very much still teaching people all to do. I wanted to share something. I found something, Dave. I did a little PD about I don't know maybe a year or so ago, and
for those of us who are in the teaching world, what's PD?
Oh yeah, professional development. Sorry. Yeah, we got to be really careful with those silly little acronyms. But I want to show you. I think I may have mentioned this. We were talking about personal purpose and finding something you love to do, and I found this, a couple of weeks ago. And let me see if I can find this here. I mentioned this philosophy of Ikigai, and I'd also mentioned that maybe Stephen will be able to tell us how to pronounce that. But I find this very powerful, and I know on some of our podcast channels we don't have videos, but if you're on YouTube and you can see this video, this whole idea of Ikigai, I just love this Venn diagram where you can see the intersection of all the things that are important in life. Obviously we need to get paid, right? So that's down in the at the bottom in the aqua blue, and you got up at the top what you love, and you can have those two things together, and it's possible that they mix in certain things, and sometimes it's not what you love, and you're also good at it, and maybe the world needs it too. If you can find something like we found teaching, let's say in general, and for me, teaching doesn't mean just teaching school. It means teaching my children, teaching other people's children, coaching swimming, working with faculty members at my university, working with principals at a school. All that is
Hmm.
is teaching and working with other people. And that center spot just it allows you to never feel like you're truly working. You're doing that personal purpose kind of wherever you are, that ikigai of it. And this all came from, like I said, a Japanese concept, and Garcia and Morales in their book, they have a book called Ikigai that's just fantastic. I want to credit them with kind of pulling this all
Absolutely,
together. But
absolutely.
it was just a really powerful thing to read about, and hopefully you can maybe pause the screen for a little and take a little bit of time to look through that, because I just found that really interesting.
Honestly, when you think about purpose again and your reason for being, and
Yeah,
sometimes it's unplanned, that absolutely can help, for me
yeah,
kind of give you a better conceptual idea of
yeah,
where these pieces of your life fall in.
yeah,
Because I don't know if you ever, as you walk through life, you really think about your being. What
yeah,
does that mean?
yeah.
What does that mean to be, Maslow's hierarchy of needs.
Hmm.
That's a unique topic just in education sometimes,
Yeah.
but the bottom level is your basic needs being met. And then
Hmm.
you gradually move up to the top to where it's self-actualization,
Hmm.
which coincides with
Right.
what your being is,
Right.
and then he, came up with that, a long
Yeah.
time ago. But I think sometimes, we, in terms of like looking at purpose again, if somebody say, why am I listening to this podcast? I would want someone to say, by listening to what you guys are talking about and what you're sharing here, it's helping me think about what I'm doing and the
Yeah.
things that I see out there, and
Yeah.
trying to give other people that idea of, your being and your purpose, and who you are may not stare you in the face.
Yeah.
It's kind of like teaching. I had this conversation with somebody the other day. You know, they're like, I don't know if I'm making a difference. How do I know I'm making a difference? I don't know if I want to stay in this profession. And I'm
Hmm.
like, you won't ever know truthfully how far your
Hmm.
impact went. You
Yeah.
won't.
Yeah.
Because, in a 30-year career, you might see 25,000 students.
Yeah.
But there you have to and I'll say, you have to believe in
Yeah.
what you're doing. You have to
Yeah.
believe that purpose that you have is
Yeah.
much bigger than
Yeah.
what you can conceptually see. And
Yeah.
sometimes I think that's hard, because it's just like when you're trying to seek out who you are and what your being is.
Yeah.
Can you see it? Do you
Yeah.
see it in front of
Well,
you? Or is
you
that
know,
something that it's unplanned and you're still
right.
looking for it? Because
Right.
I'll be honest with you, I don't know right now. If you said to me, do I truly know where I am and what I'm doing and what's my true purpose? I would like to tell you I know,
Mm.
but I can give you experiences and the things I've done that show you, yeah, I got a plan, I've done this, this, and this, but I'm still trying to foster, where else does this go? And that kind of
Mm.
lends me to why I'm doing this podcast with you.
Yeah. Yeah. I,
I'm,
I
I'm
I love
hoping.
that. I love that, and I hope I know there are people even with our in our family that watch and aren't quite sure of what the direction is in life, and that
Right,
is that is okay. You don't have to know where things are going. You got to pay your bills. I mean, that is a fact. You have to pay your bills, but
right.
but you got to find something you love doing. I mean, we are so lucky, David. I mean, and we both know this. We're so lucky to have found something that we love to do that somebody wants to pay us for. I mean, that's just so great. I mean, it just is. I want that for everybody, and
And
it's
I'm, and I,
hard.
and
It's hard for
yeah,
everybody to find.
and it's hard because I know so many people who went into teaching or education,
Hmm.
just to use as an example, it could be any profession, that because of circumstances of where they were, who they didn't make relationships with, or who they
Hmm.
built relationships with, may not have been able to find true happiness in what they were
Yeah,
doing.
yeah,
I don't think they gave it enough time. But I can tell you this right now, from day one till this 30th day or 30-year day, how you want to say that. Have I had moments where, man, I don't know what I'm doing. Why am I doing this? Of course. But I can say, just based on, just those small conversations that you have, it, I've had the best experiences. And trust me, when I'm saying that, of course there were terrible times or challenging times.
Sure. Oh yeah.
But everything that I experienced had a purpose. It guided me. It gave me ideas. It gave me ways to do things.
Yeah.
And I have to say that, sometimes perspective plays a role in this. Understanding, that sometimes the things that you want so bad may not necessarily be what you need, obviously.
Right.
But those wants that you have, you sometimes forget. You're striving so hard to be out there. You're not realizing the things that are going on right here and nurturing that. It's kind of like it goes back to the old saying of, if I water the grass, the grass is not always greener on the other side, but if you water your own grass, you'll be just fine.
It gets pretty green. That's exactly
I think sometimes, you and I, I mean, honestly, we started in this small little town.
Yeah.
And my being there started before yours, and you came there. But honestly, that we'll call it, that would be the seedling, I guess, or the sapling, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
It grew from there into something that is connecting us, in different states and different. I mean, we've gone through a lot of professions since that moment,
That's true.
But they've all been great, and they've all been, we'll call it going up the tier. But I always go back to where it all started and where it all began. Yeah. And I look at those moments in that time when I was so naive and so unknown as some of the best moments in time, because it was a time that allowed me to grow.
Yeah.
Even though I didn't know it.
I want to go back to something, because we're about out of time for today.
Okay.
But I want to go back to something that you mentioned, because when you are talking to young people about the influence that they have, I don't think people can understand the exponential influence that you can have. You talk about you and I and us influencing, I don't know, a couple thousand kids, right? I mean, over time. But just think about
I would say tens of thousands. If you think about it.
But just think about them then going out and doing that same thing, and that gets to be a giant number of people so quickly like that. It's really, really an incredible thing. I think about the young man that we taught that was just a wonderful young man, and decided later in life to go into education, and you'll know exactly who I'm talking about here in just a minute. And used to show, he was probably teacher of the year for our school system later on, and he started every school year with a little slide about himself, telling his kids about himself, and he had us, you and I, in that slide deck, saying that these are his favorite teachers and here's why they were, and and here's those kids are going to think about something like that for the rest of their lives. It's just so just finding your purpose, and sometimes you never know when the magic happens. You don't know in the time frame that there's magic happening. You're just doing your thing and doing the best you can. So take care of yourselves and love your family and love your kids, love your wife, love your spouse, love your significant other. That's all you can do.
I do want to see you capitalize on something that's so important. We're fortunate that we share this in the world of education.
Right.
Anybody out there in any profession, it doesn't.
No,
the same things that we brought to that environment, and the same things we took out of that environment are the same things you could take in other professions. And I'm certain as we continue this podcast, and because we're getting to that stage where we start bringing some guests. We
are. I think we are going to have some guests. We might be next week. We might have a guest next week.
We need to do that, because I don't like being stale. I'm going to let's end with this. Let's go with this. There's moments in time, and I'm just going to we'll use professional wrestling as an example, right? Where and actually we could use movies. We could use television. We could do stories. Stories go like this.
They do. Yeah.
There's a story map that goes up, and then you reach that pinnacle of the climax.
That's right.
But the rising actions, what builds and builds and builds. These two first podcasts are the rising action.
They are.
Because we're building up. We're setting the stage to build this thing up. Yeah. And you know what the best thing about this is?
What's that?
We are learning. We are learning right now through
I'm still
our
learning how to work the
experiences.
software. That whole screen
Yeah,
share was like a big deal for me today. I don't
I'm
know
gonna
if
be
it
honest.
worked.
I was like sitting here going, "Wow, this guy knows his stuff." I'm
It's
like,
what I do
I'm,
every day. It's very similar to
yeah,
Teams and what I'm using every day. But hey,
yeah,
as we said last week, you gotta choose love. You gotta choose two. When you can choose a biscuit, choose
yeah.
two, right? And
I'm gonna tell you this: it's gonna be a long time before we ever get to the meaning of that, because I
yeah,
want the audience
oh,
to know at large.
two
Everybody's like,
biscuits, yeah,
What's two biscuits and what's
yeah.
this
You
and that?" I
gotta.
said, It's so deep. I mean, Edgar Allan Poe doesn't know how deep this is. Bill Shakespeare would
It's
be like, "Wow, that
You
is
know what though?
amazing."
It's one of those things that you could take shallow, or
Yeah.
you could go really, really deep with it, and that's what we're going to do. So
Well,
I
here's the
think we're
thing.
done for today. Do a
We
little
are,
editing.
but people don't know how deep this goes. I mean,
Okay,
they're
all
talking.
right,
We're talking about the bottom of the Grand Canyon, buddy.
okay, all
You're
right. Two
down on,
miles.
you're down on the Snake River. We're going up the
Yeah,
Idaho. I'm
yeah.
telling you. All right.
I've been on the Snake River. That's pretty cool. I've been
Yes,
on the Snake River. Not
the
in the
only
Grand Canyon yet, David. Let's get a little geography. Colorado River is in the Grand Canyon.
right, but
Snake
I was talking
River,
River Canyons, Idaho. Well, the
Snake
only reason I
River is
brought that
yeah,
up was because
yeah.
obviously, what famous person tried to jump over the Snake River Canyon?
Oh, that would be Evil Knievel. Yeah, yeah.
Exactly, and I
In a
remember
rocket.
that
In a rocket.
rocket cycle.
Rocket cycle. Yeah. All right. We got to
Yes.
go.
All right.
See everybody
That's
next
it.
time.
Hey, peace out.
Two
Three next
biscuits,
time,
baby.
right?
All right.
Two
See ya.
biscuits.